To say that Angel Grove is a hot topic, even empowering to rise, is putting it mildly. The mystery of how such a vibrant military town by a bay went dark is at the background of the whole controversy for the Spirit Rangers, besides the Nobody virus. In St. Honore, knowing Angel Grove is just over the horizon, it's not going to be made any better by several discoveries during this episode and the sort of horror the Rangers find themselves in. Firstly, before we get to the horror part of things, or maybe as part of it, Mabe's encryption software, perhaps even aided by Lua's police scanner, doesn't just finish its decryption work and gives the group full internet access outside of Mayor Bulkmeier's signal block, but also gives Mabe back-end access to all of Angel Grove's camera and civic networks. What Mabe sees, though, makes little sense, as near one of the town population signs, a man is marking the side of a building as though making graffiti, but just with tally marks. And the time date codes don't make the tall marks consistent, cycling between 1 and 2 and 5. To top it off, the man is dressed as though fully in the middle of a blizzard, as though he's cold, even though in game it's still not quite fall yet. When Ophelia comes around, the two stumble upon another camera out of 35 or so cameras to choose from that seem to dot across the city as part of a civic network. This camera focuses on some kind of police SWAT room or maybe a scientific material room. There's an arm in a jar on the central table, and they notice a ring, like the ring that Benji found, the one that produced a train, a magic train at that. They don't have much time to dwell as they both smell toast and tea, and they go downstairs to the kitchen cooking area outside of the office, and they find Latour still in a haggard state and with wounds where he'd been chained up, but slightly rested, making food out of thanks and kindness. They ask him about his life, find out he'd been to Angel Grove, find out about his ley lines, and about him being allied to the Rangers. And even though he doesn't know what happened to them, he's at least aware of Quentin's disappearance and hopes all is well. Hopes whatever they were doing against the living smoke worked, but he's unsure how much time has passed, considering as he was flung outside of Angel Grove because of an explosion. Um, he doesn't actually know how long he's been there or how much time has passed. Lua does help to finish some of that information when she gets back from her time in the wall. Um, Ophelia and Lua both fill in some of that information about what happens when you go through the wall in the mine, but they don't qualify it as much. One talks about a Pokemon called Electabuzz, but it looks wrong, and there's like a red dragon that Ophelia talks about. Um, Benji has been quiet this morning as he sits there and he ruminates about the particularly terrifying dream that he had about the being in raggedy clothes. Latour offers a bit of information about this character in the raggedy clothes that doesn't actually seem to have a body and lets them know the Minotaur wasn't just holding him hostage and hadn't just taken his tarot cards or what remained of his set, um, but that the Minotaur acts as this being's hands. Um, you actually have to tune in to acts one and at seasons 1 and 2 of Sentinels of Senior and Becoming Mighty and Morphin to figure out which tarot cards Latour had left. But it's about half of the major Arcana deck, is what he ends up saying. Um, Really, everything that happened after the end of season two, the end of Sentinel's senior year during the protest riot. He's not sure, but Latour can fill in at least up to that point. His worries about the living smoke are well founded, and they don't seem to be in Saint Honore, so that's at least a good start. Now that they're all gathered in one place, Lua starts to act oddly and sort of is unaware of why she's doing what she's doing. But as she pulls out chairs and she takes forks to her fellow rangers as if to stab them, there's a revelation that a secondary shadow has latched onto her, forcing attacks on fellow unmorphed rangers. And when Mabe is dragged outside by Lua, the rangers do morph in order to deal with the shadow and trapping their friend. They find physical attacks don't deal damage, but attacks with elements and those of a spiritual nature do, such as the fire from Ophelia and the power of Benji's spirit blaster, and Mabe just holding on tight, trying to help fix whatever has happened. Even the high jump that Lua had figured out she had while morphed is sort of weaponized against her as Lua and Mabe both find themselves 45 feet up in the air. Luckily, on morph, they don't go the full 90 feet. Um, Saved by her fellow rangers, um, the shadow that had been sort of encroaching upon Lua's health turns into another really faded tarot card, a prince card, in fact, and following the pattern of the Emperor and the Magician cards that they'd faced together. Latour does confirm that those were part of the cards that was missing from his deck, from his major arcana, which is what he had most of. And Latour hints with some knowledge that the way the dark projection of the cards has been acting are sort of perversions of the kind of personality and knowledge base that the card would usually offer. He talks a little bit about what had happened to his Fool card in the tea shop, and how his Fool card the Fool had left, and all that had been left were the sunflowers, and even the sunflowers had changed. How his Tower card hadn't had a tower in it, but that those were not part of what was missing in his deck since they were left in Angel Grove, along with a Chariot card that was given to Jane Russell before that final battle during the protest. After all this battling has occurred, conversations happen one on one and kind of corporately about whether Latour is trustworthy. And while Mabe is sort of working out some feelings, and everyone's sort of going their separate ways for the day, for the moment, Mabe does come across another freshly dug hole out by the trailers in the shadow of the mine. Though things continue to be very strange, and there are some answers, but there are many sides to the story. The Spirit Rangers do continue to grow in tactics and facing evil and growing stronger within their own spectrum powers. The good news is they're one step closer to fulfilling the destinies they've only just begun to see. Stay tuned in early January for the next session, Hot or Cold, Hot and Cold, to discover more of the mystery of the Nobody virus, the tattered clothes trapped in the mine, the imprisonment of Latour and why he was taken, and how all this connects not just to the podcast Rangers, but to both the purposes of Angel Grove, St. Honore, Centurion Ridge, and places beyond even the earth itself. May the power protect you.